This is the story of Caty the Caterpillar. It's written by Alahna Roach, and it's been adapted for this shadow theater play. Caty the Caterpillar looked up from her branch at her friend Carter. "What did you say?" she asked. "I couldn't hear you over my munching." "I said, what does a cat go to sleep on?" "I don't know, Carter," Caty sighed to her new friend. "A caterpillar." Carter smiled his big smile at her, and she couldn't help but smile back, even though it was not his best joke. As she turned back to her leaf, she saw that another caterpillar had already eaten it. Carter pulled Caty away, saying, "Let's just go. There's other leaves. Don't worry." But as they turned away to find another leaf, they saw in every direction were caterpillars of all shapes and sizes, gnawing and chewing and ripping and chomping on every leaf, on every bush around. The bushes had begun to look sickly and ragged, and even the grass and flowers were dying from the caterpillars' endless eating. Caty sometimes wondered if there wasn't a better way, but Carter would just laugh and say, "Caty, this is just how life is for a caterpillar. Would you rather be like that guy, eating dirt in the dark all day?" He pointed below at a worm who had stuck his head out of the ground. The worm dived back down into his hole just as a robin flew overhead. "Hey, Caty, what do you call a caterpillar with no legs?" "I don't know, Carter. What do you call a caterpillar with no legs?" said Caty, already guessing the answer to his joke. "A worm!" laughed Carter as he munched on the left-behind stem of a leaf. As the caterpillars grew larger and larger, they also grew hungrier and more cranky. As they grew hungrier and crankier, they ate more and more leaves until fights began to break out amongst the caterpillars in the community. When a caterpillar found a leaf, he or she would try to hide it away from the others. And everyone felt increasingly worried that they would all run out of food. Some caterpillars dealt with their worry by telling anyone who would listen about all the many dangers they were facing, from bird attacks to humans cutting down bushes to make room for their parks and parking lots. Some continued to push others around, trying to be the biggest and most powerful caterpillars, forcing others to give them leaves out of fear. Some caterpillars just hid under branches, eyes shut tight and tummies rumbling. Some caterpillars, like Caty and Carter, did the best they could to cheer and encourage each other. Carter continued telling jokes, and Caty continued to smile, even when her tummy was rumbling. "Hey, Caty, what are caterpillars most afraid of?" "Doggerpillars." "Hey, Caty, how did the caterpillar feel about getting stepped on?" "He was crushed." Caty smiled bravely at her friend, and even laughed sometimes. But one thing was sure. It wasn't easy to be a caterpillar in those times. Then, one warm day, the glowing light of the sun seemed to draw nearer to the earth, and it seemed to every living thing that a voice was speaking inside them, strongly urging them to do something new. One by one, every caterpillar heard the voice inside, directing them to hang upside down from a branch and begin the work of building a shelter around themselves. The caterpillars did not fully understand why they were being called to do this, or for how long, and some resisted the call of that voice. They anxiously pushed themselves to keep crawling and eating until exhaustion forced them to give up. Some of the ones that stayed out too long found that more and more birds seemed to fill the air, hungrily seeking the caterpillars that had once been abundant. As Caty and Carter hung side by side, halfway finished with the work of building their shelters, Carter's jokes started to become more serious. "Hey, Caty, what was the caterpillar most worried about inside his chrysalis?" "I don't know, Carter. What are you worried about?" "Well, I'm a little worried I'll never get to leaf this thing." Carter chuckled, but Caty could tell how nervous he felt. She thought of all the times Carter had helped her feel better, not just by joking around, but by sharing and caring and being a good friend. "Hey, Carter, what do you call a pillar that bends but never breaks?" Carter's voice came out muffled from inside his chrysalis. "What?" "A caterpillar." Many changes happened during the time inside, as hours turned into days, and days turned into weeks. And just when it seemed that the darkness would become their new way of life, that warm glow of light within each living thing called out again for something new. As she felt the call, this time Caty felt excited, not nervous, and she began wiggling and stretching at the seams of her chrysalis. She had had time to think and feel and reflect on many things during her time inside. Things like sharing and laughter and hope. But one feeling had not changed the whole time she was inside. She deeply missed her friend. When she finally began to wriggle free of her chrysalis, she looked over at Carter's, but it was hanging there empty. Caty hung her head sadly and didn't even look up at the fluttering sound on the branch above her until she heard a different but familiar voice say, "Hey, Caty, why did the kid throw the butter out the kitchen window?" Caty smiled up into the sunlight, and it took a moment before she recognized how dramatically her friend had changed. "Carter, I don't know, just tell me." "He wanted to see a butter fly," laughed Carter, fluttering his bright wings and lifting his new delicate body off of the branch. Caty laughed harder than she had ever laughed. "But that's not even funny," she said, now trying out her own wings. "I know," laughed Carter, I guess a lot of things have changed." And sure enough, during the weeks the caterpillars had stayed inside, the leaves had had a chance to grow full, and the flowers and bushes had grown tall and strong. And even more amazingly, the caterpillars had all changed dramatically, inside and out. They had all grown to realize, as Caty had, that sharing and laughter and hope really were the most important things. They even changed their way of living, careful to share as much as they took, drinking nectar from the flowers and carrying pollen far and wide as a way to contribute to life. And from that time on, they followed the call of the warm light that seemed to glow inside all living things, even in times of darkness. The end.